Good afternoon. Today, Saidat, Zahid, and I are going to be talking about work culture in Italy. We're going to walk you through some relevant background information about Italian culture, then explain some differences between Italian and Canadian culture and key areas of communication, like context and communication style. We'll finish by giving our recommendations for how Canadian companies should adapt their practices when working with Italian partners. Italy is an ancient republic, and its history and traditions impact how businesses conduct their business today. Italy's own foreign investment index rated Italy as the most difficult market in Europe for foreign investors to enter. Loyalty to existing partnerships is of great importance in Italian business culture. Italian banks and companies will often form shareholder pacts to prevent foreign takeovers of Italian companies. Canadian companies must learn how to foster goodwill in their interactions with Italian businesses if they want to have fruitful relationships. It's important to understand that loyalty to family is highly prized in Italy. Family-owned businesses comprise 73% of the nation's total business transactions. This translates to an emphasis on trust and relationships in the workplace. Italians have an interesting relationship with truth. Most Italians view truth as subjective and not always the best way to maintain harmony. For example, Italy is the only country in the world that sells dual SIM card phones. The product is targeted at spouses and partners with secrets to keep. Far more important than truth to Italians is guile, the ability to charm and make a good impression. In Italian, they say, fare una bella figura. Pardon the accent. Italy is also a very diverse country. There's a saying in Italy, ogni paese è una repubblica, which means every village is a republic. In general, the north is more industrialized and will conform to international norms. The south is more traditional and is largely made of the agriculture and service industries.
Hi, my name is Saidat, and I will be presenting the context, formality, and time orientation slides. Starting off with the context, Italians prioritize high context communication channels. You would see them mainly relying on implicit nonverbal cues using their tone, a lot of gestures using body language, and also the cultural understandings that they have with one another. Italians approach people moderately directly, and they are also known to be very tactful, open about their emotions, and while remaining honest. Often, you would see them softening their directness in order to maintain their relationships by avoiding certain assertive tones, and also that helps them prevent misunderstandings, conflicts in the workplace. The hierarchical communication is seen to be top down, and that's because it reflects the seniority and also the decision making. That is, the higher ranking employees would make most of the decisions, and the lower ranking employees, for example, would be more encouraged to provide some sort of feedback. Although they're encouraged, they still kind of find it difficult because of the traditional work culture that Italian businesses tend to adopt.
Good day, everyone. I'll begin by discussing the first aspect of Italian communication style, which is deeply rooted in their cultural nuances. Italians prioritize high context communication. This means their messages often rely on subtle, nonverbal cues such as tone, gestures, and facial expressions to add meaning to their words. This style is particularly important in formal settings where diplomacy and harmony are valued. For Canadian companies, it is essential to focus not just on the words spoken, but also on the accompanying nonverbal signals to fully grasp the intent of their Italian counterparts. Additionally, Italians have a strong preference for face to face communication. Personal interactions are viewed as essential for building trust and strengthening relationships, which are central to their business culture. Emails and other written communication are often seen as secondary, used primarily for documentation purposes. Canadians should aim to conduct meetings in person whenever possible or use video calls when necessary to ensure richer engagement. Finally, let's consider the importance of formality during initial interactions. Italians place significant value on first impressions, so addressing individuals by their professional titles and surnames is customary. This demonstrates respect and establishes credibility. While informality may develop over time as relationships deepen, starting with a formal approach is a sign of professionalism. I would also like to emphasize the importance of hierarchy and respect for seniority in their workplace culture. In Italian organizations, communication typically flows from top to bottom. Senior executives make key decisions, and employees at low levels are expected to align with these directives. This hierarchical approach is deeply respected and influences how discussions and decision making take place. Canadians should be mindful of this structure and ensure they involve the appropriate individuals when navigating business interactions. While feedback is encouraged in Italian workplaces, it must be delivered thoughtfully to avoid disrupting hierarchical norms. For Canadian businesses, showing deference to senior executives while engaging respectfully with all levels of the organization is key to fostering collaboration and mutual respect.
And on to individualism. Despite being a Western country, most of whom tend to lean towards being individualists in the workplace, Italy's culture is a little bit more balanced between individualism and collectivism. There's a clear hierarchy in the workplace. Senior executives have decision-making power, and their employees do not. However, it's normal for those managers to seek consensus in their decision-making. They'll hold meetings with their employees and try and persuade them of their viewpoints before they mandate the decisions. It's also very normal that competition and disagreements are viewed positively in the workplace. They're seen as a way to arrive at a better product at the end of the process. It's important to understand that while individual efforts are valued, they are valued in the context of how they fit into the whole. There are no lone wolves in the Italian workplace. Credit will not go to the individual. It always goes to the manager for the completed project at the end. And the goal is that everybody meaningfully contributes to their projects. And seeing usefulness in disagreements is part of the team formation process too. Managers pick teams and individuals do not get to refuse them on the grounds that they don't work well together. Because as we said, that conflict is seen as part of the value creation process in Italian culture.
Moving on to the formality. Well, Italy is known for being one of the most fashionable countries in the world, if not the most, and hence why you would see a lot of their business attire to usually be conservative, well tailored, chic, and wear work suits, dresses, and also appropriate accessories. There is this expectation for the employees to be well groomed and also for them to maintain a clean appearance. This is really emphasized because the businesses want the employees to represent them adequately and to make a good first impression. With titles and greetings, how it usually operates is that, well, since respect within the workplace is expected and highly valued, higher ranking employees and even the older ones by age must be addressed using appropriate titles. This is because the elder employees are highly respected due to the value that the Italian culture tends to place on family and often would be looked to for advice, even if they are lower ranking employees. It is to note that since women are underrepresented in high level Italian workforce, they still face a lot of harassment and gender stereotypes. So in this case, they are less likely to be addressed by their proper titles compared to their male counterparts. Moving on to giving gifts, it's actually not recommended at all because of Italy's history with corruption. If you really want to give a gift to a business partner, for example, you would have to go for gifts that are a lot more thoughtful and expensive. And also completely avoid flowers because they hold a negative connotation in the Italian culture. So the next slide is time orientation. We're now moving on to the importance of time and how it's managed within Italian companies. So although the meetings tend to be scheduled 2 or 3 weeks in advance, meeting the person is much more important than actual punctuality. This is because, well, Italians see time as a flexible resource, and they don't have this notion of time being something that is limited. Not uncommon to be late for meetings, but being excessively late for about an hour or so is definitely considered to be rude. When it comes to deadlines, Italian businesses do tend to see them more as like soft targets and maybe more of a guide instead of a hard requirement or something that's strict. They would rather take their time when completing projects to prioritize the quality rather than rushing through it and submitting something that is not good. Rushing through these projects can be seen as being rude and counterproductive. Nevertheless, you could break the trust between you and your business partner if you miss an important deadline without any valid reasons.
Moving on to the recommendations, let's discuss some actionable steps for Canadian businesses looking to connect effectively with their Italian counterparts. Firstly, Canadian companies should focus on adapting to hierarchical norms. Italian workplaces place significant value on seniority and structure, so it is important to address individuals formally using their titles and surnames. This demonstrates respect for the culture and helps to build rapport. Secondly, it is vital to prioritize face to face meetings to establish trust. When conducting business, Canadians should avoid relying solely on emails or other impersonal methods of communication. Remember, in Italy, business is not just about transactions, but about building long term relationships. Another key recommendation is to schedule meetings thoughtfully. Italians often take their vacations in July and August, and December is dedicated to Christmas and festivals. Scheduling important business interactions during these months could be seen as inconsiderate and unproductive. Additionally, Italians value flexibility, so soft deadlines are recommended to align with their adaptable approach to time. By adopting these strategies, Canadian companies can navigate Italian business culture with respect and effectiveness. So, to wrap up, let's summarize the key takeaways we've learned today. Firstly, Italian business culture is highly relationship driven and hierarchical. The emphasis is placed on fostering trust, personal connections, and respecting seniority. This cultural framework influences their communication style, which is subtle and nonverbal, and their approach to time, which is flexible and people focused. For Canadian companies, the key to succeeding in this environment lies in adaptation. Adjusting to cultural norms, especially in communication and relationship building, is paramount. By prioritizing face to face meetings, adopting a formal tone, and planning around their cultural schedules, Canadian businesses can create strong partnerships in the Italian market. This concludes my section of the presentation. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions during Q&A.